because the best prices are not online. They're with SmartFares. See, SmartFares has special deals with the airlines. When they have unsold seats, they use SmartFares to fill them. So you get airline tickets at ridiculously low prices. Our prices are too low to publish online. With the extra money you'll save, you can book another trip or treat yourself to dinner or shopping. So stop searching all of those travel sites to find the lowest price on your next flight. Let one of our SmartFares expert travel agents find ridiculously low prices for you. Call SmartFares today and get the best price on your next flight. Guaranteed. Also, save up to 50% off business and first class tickets.
855-325-1820. 855-325-1820. That's 855-325-1820.
Have you ever met a single person in your life that enjoys paying taxes? No one does. If you can't sleep at night because you have a huge problem with the IRS, I've got some free advice for you. This service is strictly limited to individuals that owe the IRS $10,000 or more in back taxes. And if you qualify, we can guarantee that you won't be writing a big fat check to the IRS, or our services cost you nothing. The first 100 people that call today will get a free tax consultation worth $500. Stop worrying about your IRS problem. We can help you, we promise. Call the tax doctor right now. I mean right now, to learn more.
800-240-4587. 800-240-4587. 800-240-4587. That's 800-240-4587.
Fast Track Student Loans can get your student loans out of default, stop any wage garnishments, stop collection calls, and stop seizure of your tax refund. Give yourself a break. Stop the stress and get your student loan payments down to as little as $25 a month based on what you can afford to pay. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395.
Why have thousands of aspiring authors teamed up with Christian Faith Publishing to publish their book? Because Christian Faith Publishing is an author-friendly publisher who understands that your labor is more than just a book. We provide authors freedom and flexibility throughout the publishing process, professional book editing, award-winning design, and some of the highest royalty structures in the publishing industry. And as always, you will retain 100% of the rights to your book.
I was looking to find a company that I could trust, one that assisted in the editing process completely.
The most important qualities that I was looking for was a publisher who was honest and upfront, no hidden costs or fees, and owning the rights to my own work.
Christian Faith Publishing will publish, market, and sell your books in all major bookstores, online booksellers, as well as specialty Christian bookstores. Call for your free author submission kit.
800-978-4812. 800-978-4812. 800-978-4812. That's 800-978-4812.
Fast Track Student Loans can get your student loans out of default, stop any wage garnishments, stop collection calls, and stop seizure of your tax refund. Give yourself a break. Stop the stress and get your student loan payments down to as little as $25 a month based on what you can afford to pay. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395.
You're listening to Joco Community Radio.
Good afternoon, Johnson County. Welcome back to Let Freedom Ring on this beautiful Thursday that God has created for us. We will be glad and rejoice in it. I'm your host, Jake Wernette, and we are looking into this first segment, getting into sort of the ins and outs of the Maui disaster. And if that doesn't take up all the first half, then we're going to go ahead and jump into the first Milwaukee, I believe it was, debate where they had hosted the GOP debate between a few of our nation's governors, a young man, Vivek Ramaswamy, who is a biotech businessman, and a few of the others. First, I want to extend a prayer and a warm hand to the people of Maui as our fellow Americans who have endured more than pain can describe and more than we could ever give them in return could offer them in support. I do want to say that this was all brought to you by the failure of government. And that's not a new trend that we have seen recently. It is something that has been progressively decaying in our American society, that we have politicians and people in government that put their own interests, that put their beliefs before the justification of helping our fellow Americans. And that is not something that I'm pulling out of thin air. We, for decades, have seen the degrading of Western society, the degrade of our American government. And this beautiful republic that our founders once held to such high esteem is no longer serving the interests of the American public. So I'd like to start off with an NBC News article. Maui Emergency Management Director defends decision not to sound sirens and fire. And then they go down to the subtitle and say West Maui sirens are used primarily for tsunamis. Administrator Herman Andaya said, as questions about warnings before the deadly fires were raised. Now, there were several videos out on social media forums, and there were several things that had come out in the news. And I've never seen one mainstream news source. Where is the outrage that there was no foresight, there was no knowledge, there was no way that people of Maui, that the people of our own country could have been and should have been warned before this disaster ever took place, and 1,000 people are now missing. And they now say that 850 of those are believed to be children who were home when school got out. And you have an emergency director. Never in my lifetime, certainly already, in just 21 years of living, would I expect to see somebody who is in charge of parlaying these crises and solving emergencies, at least putting out a warning to the American people. There was never an alert. There was never an Amber Alert type deal that came up on anybody's phone. There was never a forewarning from any sort of siren system that people could hear to get out of the way of this violent fire. And without getting into all of the conspiracies and stuff, here's what we do know. We know that there was no warning from the emergency director. And when asked if he had regretted not sounding any sort of alarm, he said, "I do not." So I'll leave it at that. If we have an emergency director, and just so everybody knows, the chief of police in Maui, out of 19,500 cities in this country, the one that was chosen to be the police officer or the chief of police in Maui was the one that was in charge of the SWAT team that utterly failed at the mass shooting in Las Vegas in 2017. So ponder that, if you will. These guys probably have a very long paper trail of failing the American public. So I'm going to leave it at that. The person in charge of alerting people for emergencies did not regret not doing so, despite 850 kids now being missing. Not only that, but these kids might have been trafficked, could have been taken by anybody that was waiting for the chance to rise, just like it is in Ukraine. So it's already starting to boil my blood a little bit that we have politicians in there who swear an oath, some of them swearing an oath before the Almighty that they will protect, serve, and defend the people and the Constitution of this United States. And yet we have people who are utter failures in this government. There was one that came out. Where was the emergency director? Well, a Hawaii News Now article came out on August 17th. According to documents, Andaya was in a Waikiki at the Alohilani Resort, attending what was scheduled to be a 3-day FEMA disaster preparedness seminar called Pacific Partnership Meeting. A receipt from the hotel shows Andaya checked in last Monday, a day before the fire started. So, like I said, without getting into any theoretical physics here on these articles, you have a emergency operations director who apparently did not have an undersecretary like most bureaucratic government agencies do. So there was nobody except him that would have been able to know what to do. There was apparently no training on if something happens, then so-and-so in the next chain of command takes effect. So not only do we have an ineffective emergency operations leader over in Maui, but we also have an ineffective department as a whole. Unlike most bureaucracies in the federal government, at least the federal government, somebody else is always in charge. And you can ponder that, if you will, whether that is a good thing or a bad thing. But at least our federal government gets stuff done, whether it's bad or good. So we had an article from The Hill come out. That's where I cited the 850 people are still missing. Many of them are most likely children in the wildfires. Many of the people on social media were posting videos of them asking the governor, Josh Green, whether they have had any trace, whether they have even started looking for these kids. And he replied no to all of those questions. And if you want to give up here and make a statement, then go ahead and do so, which is a terrible thing. I would liken it to having the one of our local mayor pro tems come out and say, get off your high horse to local voters. I'm not going to say which city that was, but you could probably go back and find a good look. But it aside from a Republican standpoint, aside from a Democratic standpoint, when we have people in the United States government, even down to the local level, it doesn't matter where you are, you have to know that your bosses are those people that elect you. And if you are not willing to give them any affirmation that you're doing what you can to serve them, that you are doing what you can to defend them and their freedoms, then you don't deserve to be in that office. If you are utterly unprepared, if you are inefficient, if you are not willing to put in the best effort forward, that you are looking for these human lives, and that's what they are. The government treats us like uh, little chalk marks on a chalkboard. Like we are just some part of an equation in an accounting or a Bureau of Labor Statistics report. But I really do want to extend my thanks to those in Maui that stayed and that are helping as fellow citizens to look for these people, because it is failures in the American government that make us a laughing stock to the rest of the world. When we have lost the ability of compassion, when party and voting takes priority over human life. And whether that be in Maui, whether that be in the storms that are happening across California, now we have to recognize that we as Americans are obligated to something higher, which is what I was saying Tuesday. You know, we need something that unites us, that is not always a disaster. We can hold common ideologies. We can hold the necessity to compromise. We can hold ourselves to a higher standard than what our politicians hold us to. We need to hold ourselves to a higher standard, or else we are not going to progress in this country. So we look at a new article by the Daily Express US. Maui police chief heckled by furious locals after the water was shut off during wildfires. So not only was the gentleman who was in charge of their emergency response not even 1 ounce regretful that he didn't turn on an alarm or some way to alert these people, not only was he out at a 5-star luxury resort talking to federal officials the day before this started, not only was there no contingency plan with him being out of office, but now we have people saying, well, I was trying to fight the wildfire, but my water was turned off. And so the locals have been fuming over there for days at the lack of attention that the media has put into this fire, that they are misquoting the amount of people that are dead or missing. And now we have people trying to ask, well, why was the resources not available? And I couldn't tell you why. I don't know the ins and out of the water system over in Maui, but it just keeps adding more pieces to this puzzle of government incompetence. And we really need to see a rise of oversight in our own governments, not only our federal government, but our state governments. So I would urge the American people and those listening that might be over in Hawaii, we need to elect officials who are going to put the sanctity of life and the sanctity of valuing our fellow man first. If we can value people again, if we can value the response that it takes to operate the way that we need to for the betterment, for the goodness of the American public, we're not going to see inexplicable tragedies like this anymore. So the Hill also put out a report. It says Maui residents who disobeyed the barricades survived fires. They had the only paved road out of town blocked by barricades when people were trying to evacuate. So I think it's time that the people of Hawaii started asking, who ordered the barricades to be put up? Who ordered the water to be turned off? Who ordered Joe Cool to leave town and not leave a contingency plan for in case things like this does happen. That's not a conspiracy, but what we're seeing are more pieces to the puzzle that we obviously have elected officials who pay no mind to what is going on in this country, what is going to happen, what could happen. So these 6 or 7 articles that I had just mentioned, here's another one by the New Zealand Herald. International media is picking this up. Fatal Maui fires. A police barricade blocked people into Lahaina with no escape. Those who dodged it survived. Once again, we need to start asking as American citizens, we need to have an investigation, whether this be by a blue ribbon independent committee of the federal government, whether we wait until the next president gets into office. Hopefully it's somebody a little more competent who is not going to doze off at a survivors meeting. I don't have to mention names, but we need to have an investigation into why the government has been an utter disgrace at this disaster. And it's not just Hawaii. This can happen to any state in the union. And if we do not reform the way that our government sees crises, the way that we can react and even overreact to these things. Overreacting is better than doing nothing. And I will say that very loosely, but I will still say that acting and doing a lot is better than acting or inaction and doing nothing. So that is kind of my gist for the Maui fire. I wanted to kind of catch everybody up and do what I can. I know Mick is not here to kind of disagree, to kind of propose a different side of things, but it's important that we allow our fellow Americans to understand the situation, understand where the failures of our government are happening, because if we look at it once, it's not going to happen again. It's like the old Bushism. If you fool me once, shame on, we can't get fooled again. So, that's the only time I'll ever say a George Bush quote fits with anything. But if anybody wants to call in, you're more than welcome to. The number is 817-637-2585. 817-637-2585. If you have a different perspective, by all means, call in. This is not a censorship show. We're not running an FBI investigation. We're not running tabs on who believes what. We are here to educate the American public. We are here to provide a view that the mainstream media, that a lot of educational textbooks are not providing. And I'm not saying that we desperately need to expand the size of the federal government to achieve these things, but we need to start having people who are going to hold our elected officials accountable. And it's time that American officials recognize who their real boss is. It's not the Electoral College, as much as a few people might say that we need to abolish it. The problem lies in the American Republic that we have today, with a system as degraded as ours were. And I was reading a quote by one of our founding fathers, and the name escapes me right now, but he said, "You will get the government that you deserve." And so I was discussing this with somebody earlier today, and I was saying, well, maybe our founding fathers had a little bit more right than we give them credit for. When you have selfish, cynical people who make up the majority of people who will say, I'm happy, I'm satisfied with the way America is right now. Of course you are, because you've already made all of your money. You've already milked the system for everything that you've got. You don't have to do anything but sit at home. And so, without trying to attack anybody, we inherently allow things to happen because we lose our guard on our elected officials. And we have this mindset, especially my generation, that we can count on our politicians to get up there and change things. We can rely on the Supreme Court to overturn this. We can rely on our elected officials to ban communists from buying land near our national security sites. Like, we haven't seen those things happening recently. It's time, and I urge the American people, especially with this next general election, this coming year, we need to start taking a precedent and taking an interest. We need to encourage our youth to get involved. We need to encourage our elderly to get involved. And this country is not based on censorship. We have the ability to engage everybody in a uniform discussion. They don't have to believe the same things, but it's important that we are reading not only things from our side, but from the opposition, from those that are abroad. How else are we supposed to understand why things are the way they are if we're not trying to look at how they have evolved? So, with that being said, the Biden response was just unprecedented. I mean, not only did the gentleman go and fall asleep or stay there and sit there and I don't even know, but the Department of Housing and Urban Development gave $1.3 million funding to help the communities in the wake. I would never imagine the American Republic spending $100 billion on war in a foreign country most people couldn't even find on a map. I guarantee you more people would find interest in giving $100 billion to the people of Hawaii to rebuild their houses, to give a federal pardon from Congress on all of the insurance claims, on all of the rates rising, to put a cap on it and say the insurance cannot charge them any more than they were before. This fire was nobody's fault. It was not the citizens' fault. And our government has completely and utterly neglected the welfare and the well-being of our Americans in Maui. Now, with that being said, we look to the future because we can't just sit here in a digressing mood of the past. I'd like to talk about the 2023 debate that was happening recently in, I believe it was Wisconsin, was where Fox News decided to host it. It was online on Twitter for the Tucker Carlson fans out there and for the Trumpers. Trump's interview with Tucker Carlson got, I believe, 9 million or so views in the first few minutes that it started, and it was up to 30 million views. And I believe it within the first half hour, the first hour alone, it got 90 million views. So a third of our country or whoever else abroad was watching this was very, very far ahead, very outpacing the Fox News debate, which I will say it was nothing short of child's play. Anybody who has seen the movie Chucky, Child's Play, I mean, you take the title out of that and give it to a preschool, and I will say that is how the Republican Party has behaved in there. And without making any digressions, I'm a conservative. I'm an independent conservative because I believe that both of our parties are not beyond skepticism. Both of our parties are not beyond criticism. You can be a Republican and still criticize your party. You can be a Democrat and criticize Joe Biden. You can be a liberal and criticize Joe Biden. You can be a conservative and criticize Donald Trump. This country is not and was not founded on that, on blind ambition, blind following. When the American people give up their freedom to criticize, their freedom to think freely, as George Washington would have it, we are led like sheep to the slaughter. So, with the debate in mind, and believe me, we had a few of our nation's governors in there. I didn't think very highly of Mr. Hutchinson. I didn't think very highly of a few of the other people on the stage. And there were a few of them, let's get the facts straight, look as though they are just running to either get that $400,000 a year pension, which is what our president makes a year, is about 400 grand. And they get lifetime health care, lifetime free medical service at Walter Reed. They get a lifetime presidential escort, a lifetime motorcade. They get all of these things. So it begs the question, do we really have Republicans who are running to be selfless? Thomas Jefferson said a quote many centuries back when this country was first founding. He said, anybody who wants to run for president is either an egoist or a maniac. And I think Dwight Eisenhower had adopted the quote along those lines. But we have it, and looking at the Republican lineup, I didn't take a look at the Democrat one. I didn't know when it was happening or where. If it is out on mainstream media, I completely skipped it. So watching the Republican one, and I only got about halfway through, and I finally got tired of having politicians tell me what they think instead of telling me what's right, instead of telling me how they're going to help me. They tell me what the issue is. Last time I checked, I don't elect people to tell me what the issues are. I pay them because I understand what the issues are as an American citizen. I pay them to serve me, and I pay them to serve my constituents and my friends and my neighbors. That is what we pay these politicians for. And I want to get my honest opinion out about what I think of them. I think, and this isn't to criticize their character. This isn't to say that I hate them. This isn't to say anything bad about them. But I just feel like Governor Hutchinson, Nikki Haley, and a few of the other governors that are running, Chris Christie, are simply running to escape being forgotten. They don't want to be left in the dust. They don't want to be left behind because they know that this race is only in the matter of a few people. And I will give credit to Doug Burgum. Governor Burgum managed to get up there and kind of put the people back on track. If you will, Doug Burgum was probably more of a moderator than the actual moderators were. And I don't really hold Fox News to a very high standard right now, knowing how they ousted their prime time and their best viewed anchor. And my theory is because they didn't like something he said. They didn't appreciate his company anymore. Matter of fact, the gentleman that owns Fox News, his ex-fiance, told him that Tucker Carlson was her favorite slot, and she liked how Tucker Carlson asked people to pray for their country. And so when he kind of heard that, and they were at the engagement dinner, I believe that's how the story goes, within a few weeks, he broke off the marriage and got rid of Tucker Carlson. So I'm simply here theorizing. I'm not here defaming or discrediting anybody. And I want to say that for all legal purposes, because we do have a country where people are going to sue anybody for what they believe anymore. The situation at hand is we have a load of Republicans in the boat who are running because they want the public to keep their eyes on them. And I don't think Chris Christie or anybody like that is an exception. I don't know how many Republicans are going to agree with me over this, but we do have to keep an open mind of skepticism about why people are running in this election. Is it to beat Joe Biden? Is it to put America back on track, or is it because they want more money and power and they want that lifetime retirement? So they'll never have to worry about being unelected out of governorship or God forbid where else they go and they end up on $100,000 a year income, $55,000 a year income, and they end up on food stamps like the majority of Americans that we have living today. So with that question in mind, I do want to extend credit to Vivek Ramaswamy. And Vivek, I've held him to a high standard since he started this. And there are things that he could have done better in this debate. I don't think, using the moderator's time, I don't think using his ungiven time to call out other candidates was very appropriate. Like I said, it was child play all the way around. But Vivek had an open mind, and as a young guy, he understood that these are career politicians. They are there for their own interests. They are there for their benefit. They are there for their gain. And the political establishment that we have in Washington, D.C. extends to both the Democrats and the Republicans, and not many people are willing to admit that, even as loyalists to their party. The issue at hand is Mrs. Olson. Her husband was a prosecutor. She was a journalist who had tragically, God rest her soul, perished on a flight by the World Trade Center. Her husband was actually the one that argued the Bush-Gore case. And when the Bush-Gore case overturned for Bush and ruled in favor of him, Mr. Olson was made, I believe, chief prosecutor for the Bush administration. So we have people that outside of the realm of conspiracy and unproven facts and misinformation, we do have a credible number of instances where this establishment provides itself a vehicle to elect people that it wants to move up and career politicians that align in a certain way. And that's not a grand conspiracy theory, but we have seen it from Senator Harry Reid on down the line. So I do want to extend the credit to Vivek Ramaswamy for saying, you have to remember that these guys have been in government for 40, 50 years. They are calling on experience, I've got experience lowering taxes. Well, of course you do. You've been in government for 47 years. It's at some point you've had to have lowered taxes, raised taxes. We shouldn't treat these mindless games to play with the American people as some sort of credibility. Like me sitting here and saying, well, I hosted a show on Tuesday. It doesn't extend any more credibility for me as a radio show host. It doesn't extend any more credibility for me being a college student of political science. I'm just merely sitting here telling you what I did for the last 50 years. And somehow we as Americans, they believe that we are not credible enough ourselves, knowledgeable enough to see through this rouge, that at some point we are going to have to wake up and realize that our country is the way it is because we've been electing the same people. So with that being said, we're going to cut to a commercial break. We'll be back. We'll be discussing the 2023 Republican debate here on Let Freedom Ring. I'm your host, Jake Wernette. Stay with us.
Here's important new information from the Diabetes Solution Center for you, a family member, or a loved one suffering with diabetes. If you have lost your provider, or if you need a provider for diabetic supplies, you may qualify to receive your diabetic testing supplies now with little or no out-of-pocket cost, regardless of your age. All you need is Medicare or private insurance to be potentially eligible. Call the Diabetes Solution Center right now for details. Just takes a couple of minutes. Our friendly, knowledgeable agents will give you free, no-obligation information, handle all the insurance paperwork, and make sure your supplies are delivered directly to your door for free.
Call U.S. Medical Supply 24 hours a day. 800-597-9323. 800-597-9323. 800-597-9323. Call right now. 800-597-9323.
Fast Track Student Loans can get your student loans out of default, stop any wage garnishments, stop collection calls, and stop seizure of your tax refund. Give yourself a break. Stop the stress and get your student loan payments down to as little as $25 a month based on what you can afford to pay. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. Fast Track Student Loans can get your student loans out of default, stop any wage garnishments, stop collection calls, and stop seizure of your tax refund. Give yourself a break. Stop the stress and get your student loan payments down to as little as $25 a month based on what you can afford to pay. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395.
You're listening to Joco Community Radio.
Welcome back, Johnson County. I'm your host, Jake Wernette. You're listening to Let Freedom Ring on this beautiful Thursday afternoon with triple-digit heat back again today. First, we'd like to say Joco Community Radio is proud to be the voice of Johnson County, Texas, and is live 24/7 on the TuneIn Radio Network. TuneInJoco.com is the place to find all the ways to listen and watch. The station app is also available for free on Android and Apple devices. Simply search your store, check out our lineup and more at JocoCommunityRadio.com. This episode is brought to you by Next Level Claims, making your insurance work for you. Reach out to your local Texas sales rep at 844-839-4245. That's 844-839-4245. Be sure to dress your arms and more at thetiffy.com. Once again, I'd like to extend the friendly sentiment, and I hate asking for money, but I think it's necessary to help provide for things that the government won't. So if you know anybody, or you are a local business owner, or if you are a local person who cares about education, even if you are the smallest ant in the room to the biggest elephant on the wall, I believe it's important for us to educate our youth. There are people without kids who dreamt of having them. There are people who desperately want to educate our youth, but sadly, the school system didn't hire them because they were not credible enough. You can feel free to contribute to Mick and I on the show here. Our goal is to educate American voters, educate the mass public today, because we believe that a well-informed public is all necessary to defending from government tyranny and the tyranny of the overreaching minority from governing the majority of common sense Americans, as our founders would view it. So we're back onto the Fox News debate, the 2023 Republican debate, the first of, I'm sure, many wonderful reality shows to come. I want to say, aside from the Donald Trump indictments, I'm not going to get into that today. I don't think Mike Pence is in the right mind to be elected president. And that's not just me saying it for political reasons. This isn't even coming from a personal bias. I just think Mike Pence wants the authority of being elected president. And we do have a caller coming in here. Caller, you're on the air live with Let Freedom Ring. I'm host Jake Wernette. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
Good. Did you want to contribute to the discussion on the 2023 debate?
No, I want to contribute to your general line of topic itself. I want to say, first of all, Ryan from Denton, Texas, longtime listener, first time caller.
Yes, sir.
Love your show, love your topics. It's not only the establishment hiring career politicians that is the seed planted in this country that's leading to its downfall. It's also the notion of hiring and electing officials who are well versed in making money off of the American people that are driving us into the trash can.
And we've seen this not only through the crises facing the people in Maui. Like I said, I don't know if you heard the first segment, but there was a lot of parallel arguments that went into this. The emergency director just so happened to be out that day. The water was turned off. The police barricades were put up before people started evacuating. So there was they still have not accounted for all of these deaths or these disappearances. So what we're seeing is a total lack of failure because these politicians get in and they think just because they have 40 years of experience that gives them some sort of credibility, and yet they still
but they're not actually doing anything in their position to benefit the government agencies that we rely on, like FEMA, for instance. Just said that they're going to be insolvent in weeks. They're going to be broke.
And it's all of this mass spending that we have been spending for 50 years, money that we don't have. We're taking in taxes that we
going places
we don't
that
have.
It has no business going too.
Oh yes. And so we look at the state of our nation, and we look at the majority of Americans here who don't agree with these policies. I've talked to Democrats who don't agree with anything Joe Biden's done. I've talked to Republicans who might not agree with some of the things Donald Trump did, but respected the guy for his honesty. But I think it's time that we got a new generation of politicians in here, not necessarily young, but people that have an open mind and are able to give better policies for the people, things that benefit them before it benefits the government.
It comes down to principle.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it comes down to principle. If you don't have the principle to be spending other people's money and or coordinating agencies that you may or may not be qualified to coordinate at all, stay the hell out of it.
Yeah.
Anyway, just wanted to contribute, give you my 2 cents. I appreciate what you do. I love your show. Keep up the good work, and I can't wait till your next one.
Yes, sir. Thank you for calling in. God bless you.
Likewise. Take care.
So, back onto the debate, like the caller had mentioned, we have all of these career politicians, and I do believe Mike Pence falls into that category. The guy's been in government for 40-something years now, and I think it's crazy that we fall for the continuous guise of somehow lowering taxes and raising a strong national defense entitles someone to be in the highest office of the land. When we have people that put themselves and continuously have put their investments, their business, their inside trading, and all of these things before helping the American people, why should we continue to fall for the guys that somehow lowering taxes, putting prayer back into school is somehow entitles you to be there? I've met plenty of people that are Christians, and they say, well, I saw this guy, he was elected to champion religious freedom, and then we never really saw anything out of it. They say, well, all of these regulations, this red tape was cut, but I don't see any small businesses coming back. We talk about raising the standard of living, the quality of life in this country, but yet nobody can afford a home anymore. We're looking at a war in Ukraine that we frankly, and I believe we don't need to be getting involved in, because where's the money going? There's no accountability. There's no oversight to where this budget was spent. They've got $100 billion, and And I don't know if anybody knows this, but if you took a standard semi pallet and loaded it 6 feet high with $100 bills, that is what it would take to put $1 million on a truck. $1 million weighs about 2,000 pounds when you get right down to it. And so we have spent 1,000, 10,000, 100,000. I don't even know what the exact number is. Let's look it up here. So we're looking at $100 billion, and we want to divide that by 1 million. So yeah, it's about 100,000 times the amount of pallets that it would take to make 2,000 tons. So we're looking at roughly 2 billion pounds worth of dollars. 2 billion pounds, 2 million pounds. It's a big number. Worth of $100 bills has been spent on a war that most Americans aren't even involved in. And yet we have these disasters. We have these interests that come before that. You talk about family businesses being overseas where this money is going. You talk about all of these confidential human sources coming out from Grassley's office. You hear about all these things coming out, and without getting into all of these scandalous things that these officials have done, we still manage as an American people to watch this happen. It's time to get off the couch this election. It's time to urge your state government. It's time to call your state representatives, your state senators, somebody you know with a direct line to their personal cell. Get in touch with them. Tell them it's time to make voting a national holiday. It's time that we let the teenagers that are able to vote out of school for an hour even, to let them go vote. They don't need a hall pass. Get rid of that. It's time to stop letting our politicians tell us work is more important than voting. It's time for all of our businesses, if they really were interested in the game of letting people go, let their voice be heard, it's time to make it a national holiday and get everybody out to vote. And that is really one of the only legal ways to do it. I'm not here to advocate for anything, but to see a country with a weaponized justice department where, regardless of where you stand on the Trump issue, is targeting Catholics because they're calling Catholics extremists, where they are targeting parents for going on school boards and speaking out because they don't want their kids learning the business of what goes on between two consenting adults in the bedroom, going on between two kids who are not even old enough to do color by number, are now being called domestic terrorists. When you have a government who sends 2 million tons worth of $100 bills over to a guy with no oversight, we don't even know where it's going. And you have a Department of Defense who is sending all of this material overseas, and we haven't passed an audit in 50 years for the Department of Defense, nearly the entire time that it's been in existence. It's time that we took notice. And this isn't even having to do with conspiracy. This is all stuff that's real. We have a country in decline, and all of these politicians want to get on stage. They want to tell us, here's what's going on. Here's the issue. Here's what needs to be done about it. I don't want somebody who's going to be in there for another 40 years and say, well, we've been working magnificently on this for the last 4 years. Can I get another 4 years? What right do you have in your mind to come back to the American people that you've already failed and ask them for another 4 years? When we get into discussing career politicians, and if anybody feels free to jump in, we've got another 16 minutes here of this. 817-637-2585 if you feel like it. Democrat or Republican, Libertarian or Independent. I feel like at this point in American history, we're all going to have a similar opinion with different verbose views about it. So go ahead and call in if you desire to. This country is in a place where our history is being determined by what we do today. Do we want to elect the government that we deserve? I feel like either way, whether somebody voted 81 more times than they should or not, has no precedent on this. We get the government that we deserve. And I do give that quote credit to our founding fathers, because when we have a lot of self-centered, self-interested people running our government, especially from corporations, when we have people who are making it all about me, I get all these views, I get all these likes, I get all this stuff, you're going to elect those same people to office. When you sit there and complain, why is Mr. Congressman from New Hampshire sitting here and posting something about him shaking hands with a bunch of college kids. Well, rather than him being there and actually letting those kids come to the Capitol instead of letting them talk to him about issues, he spends 5 minutes on a photo op opportunity because that is the society that elected him. When we talk about people getting elected with businesses and they do all of this trading, they know what's going to happen in the stock market because they pass a law for the stock market a week before and then they make all this money. Well, when you have a public that you have cheated out of getting into a home, living the American dream, being able to provide for a family, being able to provide for a household, those are the people that you're going to elect, people that cheat because they can't afford to do it any other way. When you have politicians who come out and say, well, it's this guy's fault, it's this guy's fault, chances are a lot of childish people are the people that elected them. I'm not saying that's a generalization. I'm not trying to make a hasty generalization of every single person in this country. But when you have people that are falling for this Marxist socialist ideology that are spoiled brats, they get all of their college paid for, and then they elect they repay their parents by electing somebody that says, I'm going to get you off the hook for everything. Nobody in this country is ever going to have any responsibility or any accountability for their actions anymore. And I really do believe that our founding fathers were right when they said the government that we elect is the government we deserve. So how do we solve this problem from here? I'm going to give you two major solutions. Number one, before we can fix our politicians, we have to fix ourselves. We have to become a nation that is both humble, that has integrity, that is not willing to betray their neighbors for an extra hot dog bun, that is not going to go out and steal all of the water on the shelves because somehow everybody is getting sick. We need to have an America where our neighbors care about each other again. The age of sitting here in your homes, never interacting with your neighbors, never getting out on the street should be over by now. In the 1940s, 1950s, and I might just have dementia because I wasn't alive in this time. But I've heard from older people, you never sat in your home and watched TV. You never even listened to the radio. You were outside playing. You were outside doing stuff. You had neighborhood barbecues. That might not have been the case for every place everybody grew up. But we need to get back to this country where all of our citizens are integrated together. We do have an identity in this country. And it has been paved over by a lot of red tape. It's been paved over by calling people domestic disturbers. It's been paved over with religious persecution, whether you are a Catholic, a Protestant, it does not matter. When you have people that are longing for a purpose in this country, that are seeking out gender affirming healthcare and all these things because they don't feel like they belong, it comes from a much deeper crisis in this country. And I do believe mental health plays a big part in this. Because when people don't feel like they can ever live an American dream, when people don't feel like they can succeed, and when people don't feel like they have a purpose anymore, we seek out all of these worldly ways to affirm ourselves that our existence is known, that our existence is not futile. But when we look at our politician, we see the same people that our society is becoming. We have to ask ourselves, why don't we change ourselves? Why don't we stop being selfish and buying everything in the store because we need to have all of the water and toilet paper in the world and give to those who are less fortunate? It's not communism, it's not redistribution, it's called charity. It's called being polite and giving other people a chance to succeed. And I might be a little bit more brash today. I might be a little bit verbose today, but I don't mean any harm for anybody. This country was founded by good people. This country has good people in it. We need to get to a place where we are telling our politicians, you need to get off your high horse. We need to be in a position where we're telling our politicians, we don't need to be greedy anymore, and neither do you. We don't need to be cheaters anymore, and neither do you. We don't have to join a sports league with people who are physically different than us to succeed. And you don't have to pass all these laws to affirm things that ultimately boil down to ego and maniacalism. We need to step up as Americans again in this decade. We need to vote like our country depends on it, not for a Democrat, not for a Republican, but somebody who cares about the American people. And until the day comes where we can get a politician in who no longer cares about themselves, who is, as Christians, as whatever religion, every religion has the value of some sort of selflessness in it. So the day that we can have a politician who affirms to the idea of it's not for me, it's for the American people. I don't want to be in this office. I don't want to have this responsibility, but I'm willing to take it on in order to better my country. We need somebody with a servant mindset who understands that their real boss is the American people, that they are elected by the American public to serve, protect, and defend the Constitution of these United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And with all of their abilities, with all of their talents, is willing to give up a lavish lifestyle if they're living it. I would vote for a homeless man off the side of the street because he has some intellect, because he has seen the way that it is and doesn't want it to be like that anymore. All Americans should be favoring that. We should not live in this age where you are going on OnlyFans or you are going on a binge on sinful things because you can find no other way. You need to bring yourself up by your bootstraps. We need to find this American exceptionalism again because it's not bad. Telling people you can't succeed because you're a certain race, telling people you can't succeed without federal help because of this or that is racism. It's misogyny. Saying that people can't succeed because they are a certain thing is discrimination. And I don't care how many laws you pass. I don't care what party you are. We as Americans need to come together and say it doesn't matter who you are, what you want to be. It's time that we had some value back in our government again. When we take some value in ourselves and we find what we are capable of, that is what our government's going to do. We elect the government, we create the government that we deserve. And our founders certainly saw a government where all are created equal, where all are endowed with inalienable rights as a proper government. When we start seeing the government take advantage of the citizens, we start seeing the government put itself first. As Chris Christie said in the debate to, I believe he was talking to Vivek Ramaswamy, he said, we don't need to elect somebody who is not going to better this government. We don't need somebody who is not going to put the government interest first. I would rather have somebody who puts 1,000 people's interest first before I elect somebody who puts the government's interest at first. People who have put the government's interest first from the time of Mao Zedong and the time of Lenin, the time of Vladimir, what's his name? Trotsky. When you look at Marx, when you look at all of these people, Engels, they were all very, very vengeful people. People who had all of these bad things happen to them and had the chance to say, well, bad things will happen in this world, but the beauty of this world is I can do something better than what the world is doing to me. Yet they sought to get into power. They sought to subvert the people. They thought, if I can just get into power and make things better for myself, I can see everybody else suffer, but I'll be all right. You have a very maniacal, a very egotistical. Our founders might have been onto something. When you see people on the rise in Germany, when you see people from history on the rise in China and Russia, when you see all of these dictators coming up in South Africa that take advantage of the people, they don't have the opportunity to fight back once it's too late. And I'm not talking about going and hurting people, but we as a country need to kind of step up and have the standard of morals, the standard of idealism, the standard of exceptionalism that we held in the 40s and 50s for ourselves. That we fought 2 world wars so that we can succeed, that our young people can be safe at home, that they can have a home when they grow up, that we can have all of these wonderful things, the blessings of God to our posterity that our founders idealized for us. And when we see people stepping up where the government fails is the beauty of this country. You know, we debated on Tuesday about what does it mean to be an American. I believe being an American means that you put others before yourself. And that's not even a communist idea. That's not egalitarianism. It's not utilitarianism. It's called having a mindset for charity and service. If we have people in the military that I have seen articles, National Guard man rushes over to a lady in wreck that has heart failure, or somebody that's choking on the side of the interstate and a National Guardsman comes over and puts a pin and gives her a tracheotomy so that she can breathe before the ambulance gets there. That's what I'm talking about. We need to have a country where this mindset of service comes back to our citizens. Instead of saying that we can't do anything, we don't need to empower people to fight back. We don't need to empower people to be radicalists. We need to empower people to be better. What we have lost in this country, especially my generation, we have lost the will, we have lost the empowerment, the desire to better ourselves. When we see young people going out and painting houses for people because they don't have the money to, when we see a community come together and build a playground. When I was going to school, the school never even had a bond. The school never had any method of payment to build a playground. So what happened? The people from the PTA and the PTO got together and said, "Let's put all of our own money into this." They all donated some. They went around door to door asking people to donate. And when the school opened it, it was the newest, the most beautiful playground that anybody had ever seen. And it took 2 weeks for it to finally open up. But when it did, the kids had something marvelous that they could be grateful for and say, "Well, I'm not burning my hands on metal equipment anymore." When we have a country who puts others before themselves, when we give an extra roll of toilet paper to that old lady in line who might be on food stamps, who might be on Social Security, she doesn't have the money to buy $500 in water or toilet paper. When we see our young people giving the candy bar that they bought, giving half of it to the old man on the street because he hadn't had nothing to eat, or we see people starting to help others and serve others in this country. It used to be commonplace. It used to be small businesses would treat people with respect. You had repeated customers because you treated them as a person. Mr. Charles, how are you doing today? It's wonderful that you came in and bought the screws for that chicken coop. Instead of saying, "Well, I'm sorry you can't return these stripped bolts, so they came that way," it's a liability for us to do so. When did this country start becoming about legality and stop becoming personal? So I leave you with this today. I challenge every American listening to this, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, we need to find a way that we can all help somebody. There's never too little time in this life to do something for others. There's never too little time in this life. If you're a retired teacher and you see the education system going the way it is, we need to have communal schools come back. We need to have people willing to educate school children in the neighborhood who don't want to be fed this Marxist divisive ideology. It's killing our youth. It's killing our country. But what are we going to do about it? Are we just going to sit here and complain? Are we going to sit here and allow this to happen? We need to have a new enlightenment. We need to have a new rebirth of the American spirit. And I don't mean that we need to have all of this new fancy ideology. We don't need to have socialism to do it. We don't need fascism to do it. When we can have a country that puts others first, and it's not even a communist ideology like I've been saying, it's about well-being. It's something that we did in the colonies at Plymouth. It's something that we did at Jamestown. It's something that we did. He who doesn't work doesn't eat. That was written in the gentleman who founded Jamestown's diary. It was also a Bible verse. And I had said this on the road the other day to my grandmother. Shout out to all the people listening in Arkansas, by the way, and to Joy, who I met in the parking lot. She was a joy. So when people don't work, they don't eat. When farmers don't work, they not only do they not eat, but civilization doesn't eat. When we have people that don't work in this world, we have people that are lacking in something. When teachers don't work, kids don't eat knowledge. When government servants to the people don't work, the people don't eat the government that they deserve. When we have people in this nation in the media that don't eat knowledge and eat truth, the people are never they don't work in that. The people are never going to eat the truth. When we have people who dwell on, "There's no place for me, there's nothing that I can do, it's just beyond me, the government's just too big anymore," there is never such a thing as too big of a power to withstand the will of the human nature to do good for somebody else. So I encourage everybody, he who doesn't work doesn't eat. What are you going to do to work for civilization this week so that others can eat what is missing in society? God bless you. I'll see you next Tuesday. This has been Let Freedom Ring. I'm your host, Jake Wernette. Stay cool, Johnson County.
From Burleson to Venus and Grandview to Godley, this is the voice of Johnson County. JOCO Community Radio.
Let's be honest. Wheelchairs are heavy, bulky, and ugly. If you carry a wheelchair in your car to take care of a loved one, you know how hard it is getting that